Sunday, Leapers. Hey, welcome to Life After the Leap. My name is Kathy Wright, and I'm your host of the Life After the Leap podcast. And today we have my bestie, Jolinda Miller. She's on the phone with us. She's on our podcast with us. Everybody say hi to Jolinda. Hey, Jolinda, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you today? Happy Sunday.
Yes, I'm so excited that you're here. I wanted to bring you on, right? To kind of talk about your life because I think you've led an amazing life, and I think it's a real inspiration on faith and trust and service. And I just wanted to, to continue to inspire the people who have the leapers who are part of our group, who are in those spaces where they're trying to figure out, in some cases, what they might want to do next. And I love to bring inspirational stories. So, of course, I thought of you.
Yes.
And again, thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolutely. Wouldn't have missed it. I'm a leaper.
That's right.
Everyone should be a leaper.
Leap, leap, leap. Okay, so Jolinda, you were a college athlete. Like a really, really good college athlete. Tell us a little bit about what that was, what you used to do.
So I played women's basketball at the University of Cincinnati and left my small town of Coshocton, Ohio to go to the big city of Cincinnati. And thankfully, we're the big city. Thankfully, that God ordered my steps here because I really have never left other than a small stint in Nashville, but came and played basketball, had a great career, got a great education. I had an amazing internship, and just met some good people, and it kind of set me on my path for life. So basketball was all I knew. It was all I did growing up. I had played since I was about 4 years old. And just like, the rash of suicides that are happening with student athletes right now, especially female student athletes, it was hard. I mean, it was, they set things kind of in motion for you to be successful, but that also makes you fit within a certain structure. And so you have to go to study tables, you have to work out, you have to go to practice, you have to travel, you have to be there for recruits, you have to. So I think sometimes people think this, oh, well, you're going to school for free. It's not really, it's a trading in of your time. And so I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship, but it did take up a lot of my time. I didn't make a lot of connections, I feel like, that I could have made back then, just because I was playing basketball and everything was basketball. And then when my career ended, I was unprepared to do anything other than play basketball.
So let me just pause you for a second, because I think you hit a lot of gems in there that I want to highlight. One thing you said is that, you played basketball all of your life, and you were fortunate enough and talented enough to get a college scholarship to go and play for the big city school of the UC. And there's pressure there, right? Because you transition from a small town to a larger city, from high school to college. Like, all of those transitions can be heavy on a 17 or 18-year-old, coming into a space where there's a huge amount of expectations about what you're supposed to do. Like you talked about the study table. So you had to keep your grades up, and you had to play at a very high level. So there were no supports for you when you transitioned into that space, when you leaped into college basketball?
I would say when I came to college basketball, there were supports. I mean, but it was all new. It was all scary. I mean, you're leaving home for the first time, and it's doing what you love to do, but it's still scary. So we had an academic advisor. We had our coaches that could help us. But in terms of I guess it's like any other normal college kid. Nobody's going to hold your hand every step of the process and walk you to your 8 o'clock class. They're not going to walk you, and it's just at some point you have to find the courage and the wherewithal to just go do it for yourself and decide, early on what success looks like, because while things were in place to help you succeed, nobody's going to do it for you. Nobody was writing my papers. Nobody was practicing 3 hours for me and then another hour on ball handling and shooting. I mean, that was just all hard work. So there were support systems in place to help with the transition. But once you got there, I mean, you were on your own. It was like, it wasn't just scattering marbles. It was a little bit of controlled chaos, but you had to have something inside of you to say, okay, like they've gotten me here, but I want to go here. And that's me. That's the me place. You can have everybody get you to here, but when you want to go here, you got to dig down deep and find that. And so I feel like both transitions for me surrounding college were probably the hardest ones of my life, because you're leaving your parents, you're leaving everybody that's for you, you're leaving where you were the superstar in high school, you're leaving where, a lot of, basketball players and college athletes were like homecoming queen. They had a 4.3 GPA. Everybody loved them. It was easy. Appears to be easy. And then you get to college and you're nothing. You're just nothing. And you have to start over. And the same thing happened when I left college. It's not like, UC now prepares these kids. And I mean, they prepare these kids. They have a plan for employment after they graduate. They have people that walk the walk with them. They do resumes, they do headshots, they do mock interviews, they have co-ops. UC prepares these kids now. Back at the time, really, when I played, I graduated, I didn't have a resume, and I was a communications major. It's not like we couldn't have been doing these things, but I had never done an interview. I didn't have a headshot. I didn't have a resume. I remember typing up my first resume on a word processor, trying to figure out how to even type out And so when I was done and I didn't make a WNBA team, I really didn't know what to do. Like, I was really stuck. And so that graduating college to me was kind of a forced leap. You kind of are forced to leap. You got to figure out what you're going to do and what your whole career looks. And everybody says, like, you're supposed to know, well, you had a major, you had a whatever. Well, my major was basketball. Right. Plain and simple. I wanted to play basketball. So it wasn't like anything career-wise was thought of. So, I kind of call after college like my walkabout phase. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I probably had 3 or 4 jobs. Living in Nashville. I was going to try to start playing for one of the ABL teams, and they folded. I had already turned down 3 overseas contracts. Wow. Because I couldn't conceive. I was scared. If really at the bottom line, like, I was scared. I didn't want to go to Croatia. They were in the middle of a civil war. Turkey had just had a, 8-point-something earthquake. The infrastructure was in shambles. And so Nashville seemed to be the best bet for me. And I did sort of find some footing there and made my way back to Cincinnati. And thank goodness that I did, because when I came back here and was on the women's basketball staff for 3 years, it really, that set my career path, was coming back here and realizing I didn't want to coach because I just wanted to play. And so when you're coaching and you can't play, it was really hard for me to be around that. So I ended up being the director of basketball operations. So I was an administrator. So I learned to balance our 7-figure budget. I learned how to do time management. I learned logistics. I learned, scheduling travel. I learned about never making a mistake and being perfect in the work. And so, had it not been for, I guess, that little transition period of, going to college and then finding my first real job, that was a 7-year period for me. That was the hardest of my life, and why I really try to mentor young women in that space that are leaving college, because it's very difficult, especially when you're an athlete.
I appreciate your story, especially, hearing about like how scared you were, understanding that a lot of people, think when you are graduating college and you've had a major that you should automatically know, and you don't always know. I mean, now I think, like you said, there are more systems in place to ensure that you get internships and fellowships and all of those things while you're in college. But if you are busy doing, in your case, athletics, right? There's not necessarily a space for you to also do your academics and also do, like, trying to figure out internships and fellowships. So I think, it's really important to note that through that, though, you still persevered, you were able to find your way. But like you said, it was 7 years of, you were working and making money for sure, but it was just trying to find what was speaking to your heart again, like basketball had before.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talk to me about, okay, so you went to Nashville, you came back to Cincinnati, you were working in athletics. How did you transition over into becoming an athletic director?
So it was this is a crazy story. So I was at home for Christmas break, and there was an Oprah show. And it was the Oprah show where she took her whole entire staff to Africa, and they got each little girl a doll that looked like them. And they got each little boy a soccer ball. And then they got a backpack and they got a whatever. And so kids were walking, 6 and 10 miles to come to this thing. Kids that had never owned a book, she got them books. I mean, and so the whole episode, I just kept thinking, what am I doing with my life? The whole episode, it just spoke to me in a way, because I had gotten in a fight earlier that day with an argument with one of the basketball players earlier that day, because we had gotten like new shoes in for the second half of the season, and they were saying how ugly they were and how they didn't want to wear them, and how and I was like, I bought my own shoes. I'm like, the players that played in the 70s bought their own shoes. I played 94 to 98. I bought my own shoes. And this is 2003. And I'm like going, what, really? Like, this is where we're at. We hand you $110 pair of shoes and you're complaining. But yet these kids on this TV show in Africa, it was just the perfect juxtaposition. And I believe God has his hand again in all of this. Like, that was not a coincidence that I had that argument that day, and then that Oprah episode was on that night.
And I think I love when those moments happen. I call them, well, people call them all the time, God wings, right?
Yes.
It's kind of like you just kind of have a knowing in your spirit that this message was meant to get to you today, so that you can start to think about how to leverage what you just, the epiphany you just had, the information you just got, to change and transition some aspect of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So it just God pushing me out. So I sent an email to the head of CPS HR, Carol Landwehr at the time. And I just said, hey, this is my skill set. This is what I want to do. If you ever have anything come up, like, I'm your girl. And I didn't think anything of it. This was January. I was under contract until, April with the women's basketball team. And I got a call probably 3 or 4 days later from the principal of Hughes, Bob Cease, and he just said, hey, if we have an opening, would you be interested? You sound like the person. And I'm like, absolutely. So April rolls around and I'm the new athletic director at Hughes High School. So, which was a whole other crazy, that was a whole other crazy. I know, right? And then I met you. That was a whole other crazy leap. But I mean, I wanted it. It wasn't like I had to leave UC. It wasn't like I was unhappy at UC. I wanted to be an athletic director. I remember when I was little, writing on the back of my mirror, on the back of my door of my room, like, I will be an athletic director by the time I'm 35. I have no idea why I wrote that. I'm sure it was God, but that was my life's goal. I wanted to be an athletic director. And so here I was in my, mid 20s, named an athletic director. And at the time we were a Division I school, it was unheard of. So It was, I did bring a skill set. I did have a lot to learn. I learned a lot about people and kids and instilling the culture, I wanted to instill. But I will say it till the day I die, it was the best job I ever had. I was there for 15 years, and the people, the staff, the students, the things we accomplished, the fun we had every day. There was not a day of work. There were long hours, but it was never a day of work. It was incredible, as you well know.
Yeah, it was a really special time. But the thing I love about your story is that, like, you had no idea that you would end up at Hughes, but when you were a little girl, you put it on your mirror, right? And I tell people that I work with all the time, put your dreams and your goals in a space where you can be reminded of the promises that you made to your 8-year-old self.
Yes.
Right? Because there's two people you're going to have to, at the end of this whole thing, right, that we call life, that you're going to have to, like, respond to, answer to. Your 8-year-old you and what you said you wanted to be, and your hopes and your dreams, and your 80-year-old you.
Yep.
Did you do everything you said you wanted to do? Right.
Yep.
And so if you can reconcile those two, then you know that you've lived a life of reminiscing and not regrets. So, I just love that you put that, without even really like calling it a thing, right? Really kind of manifested into your life this awesome job, which happened to be a huge leap, moving from a life of a college basketball, winning champion, Hall of Famer, over into a high school, which happened to be right across the street from the university.
Yes.
But really, really different from the high school that you experienced in Coshocton.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had no real, other than really coming to UC, like I experienced a ton of diversity at UC, but my high school was, I mean, we're farmers. I mean, just flat out, like the whole community is farmers. It's sandwiched between Amish country, and it's predominantly white. It is a lower to middle class type area. There is a lot of poverty now in our county, so it was of why we were successful. I hate to use the term I was successful. Why we were successful is, culture can happen anywhere. Culture can happen in inner city, culture can happen in the country, culture can happen in your house. And so having the vision of what I wanted my kids to believe they could be, and instilling in them and bringing in coaches that love them, that could cultivate them into the people they were meant to be, that was very important to me. And there were some coaches that were great teachers in the building, when you're talking about leaping, that I had to say, hey, I think you'd be really great at this. Like, well, I didn't run track in college, but that's okay, because you love the kids and you ran track in high school and you're going to care for them and you're going to nurture them. And so I remember begging, Maurice Henderson to be the track coach, and him finally being the track coach. And 3 years later, we're sending 9 kids to state. Yeah. We didn't even have a track. Yeah, we didn't even have a track. So, I think about, like, the coaches believing in, well, first of all, we have to believe in the principal, and the principal has to believe in us. And then I had to believe in the coaches enough to say, hey, you're the right person, just trust me. And then they would have to leap. And so the courage that it took to kind of put that whole thing together when we were severely understaffed and underfunded, I just think, like, look what God did. Like, that's what I just keep going back to, is like, look what God did. If people don't trust you and don't trust your vision and don't, so it was a very just indescribable experience. And so I feel like the people that were there with us at the time, that lived it with us, no matter where they've moved to or gone, they know what we're talking about. It's hard to describe. It's hard to describe.
It's really hard to describe, but you were an integral part of that. And the part that I loved about what you said is that you saw in people some things maybe they didn't see in themselves, and that's critical for, us as parents, for us as leaders, to always be looking for the thing that maybe the person hasn't recognized about themselves yet, and pouring into that part of them so that they're able to stand up and take a leap of faith, right, and to jump into a new space.
Yeah.
So
And I would say as well, like, because I'm guilty of that. I'm
mhm,
guilty of not believing in myself. Even to this day, there's things I doubt all the time I can do. And that's why, like, I think you should always have great mentors and people
mhm,
around you that believe in you, that when you are too scared to go yourself, they just take your hand and they say, well, come go with me. Because it's less scary when you're walking with someone. And so I feel like everyone should have great mentors above them. And then
mhm,
I feel like if you are in a place of capability, no matter what it looks like, I feel like you should mentor somebody younger than you that is, below you, that you need to pull up. And
yeah,
it's not like the young people can offer you anything. Like, I just had lunch with one of my mentees the other day, and she says, there's nothing I could ever do for you, but if I could ever do anything for you, let me know. And I said, you know what you can do? You can pay it forward. When
yeah,
you get to the place in your life where you want to be, remember this and go get you somebody and pull them up.
yeah,
And so that's the important thing, is if you can't do it alone and you're too scared to do it alone, find someone that will grab your hand and say, you got this, and I've got you, and I'll do it with you. And I will get you to this place until you can stand on your own feet. And that's why mentors and strong women, I always say, strong women, it can be a man, but strong women in my life are very important.
I think so. And I was just, thinking as you were talking about that, how that's kind of why I started this group on Facebook, is because when you are in a space and you know that you want to do something but you don't necessarily know how, and there isn't help readily available, like how can you network together to create a group of encouragers, right? Of like minded people who want to support you and hold your hand, like you talked about, and help you make the decisions, help you make the choices that are going to change your life for the better and in ways that you want to experience, right? And so I really like love the fact that you are able to articulate that in your life with others, that you're mentoring, and that people were there for you. So tell me, okay, so you're not an athletic director anymore. You're magically doing something else that you leaped into, right? Okay, so
Yeah.
tell me about that leap.
So that was very hard for me. God had been knocking on my heart for quite some time. And God speaks to me in sunrises and sunsets, and he speaks to me in numbers. But he had just been telling me for probably the last 5 years I was at Hughes, do more. I don't
Mm,
know why those words, but every time I would do something, or I'd be tired, or I'd be like, I can't go one more day, I would just hear him say, do more. And I'm like, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what do more looks like, but I'm going to do more. So I just kind of poured myself into, doing other things in the community. I joined a board, I just did some other things. And then I literally, another God wink moment. So the contingent from UC came over to Hughes to let me know I had gotten into the Hall of Fame. And this was in 2014, I believe. And
mhm,
Karen Hatcher was one of those people, and came over and development, and it's your alma mater, and it's your, and I was like, you're crazy. I'm never leaving Hughes. I'm going to be at Hughes till the day I die. This is great. This is awesome. This is amazing. And I remember one day coming to Hughes and sitting in the back parking lot, and I could not get out of my car.
mm,
And it's like, it's a hard, painful, I don't know why it's painful, because I loved it. I loved it. But just
mhm,
one day I couldn't get out of my car. And I was like, okay, why don't you want to get out of your car? What are you going to go in there and do? Nothing. Literally, I said nothing. You have everything done. And this was, probably in the spring. I mean, I had everything done for the entire rest of the calendar year, because once you've done something so long and you get really good at it, You work
Mhm.
ahead, you work ahead, you work. There was nothing to do that day. It was
Mhm.
literally, I was going to go sit in my office, sit at a computer, or go up to the gym and see the kid. There was nothing to do. And so I started saying to myself, maybe I do need a change. Maybe
Mm.
this is the time that I need to start looking for a change. And I will say that while I still loved Hughes, and it just became a, um, not that I had knew how to do everything, because there's always new things to learn and a new group of kids and a new whatever. But I am a person that needs to constantly be learning and to be challenged.
Mhm.
And I was not learning. I was not being challenged. God kept telling me to do more. So I had this huge internal conflict that what I needed to get done could not be done at Hughes.
Mm.
And so finally deciding that maybe I do want to try fundraising. We'd had a lot of success at it at Hughes. And maybe I do want to go back to my alma mater for a little bit and figure it out, because all roads seem to lead back for me to the University of Cincinnati. Whenever you're stuck, you just go get a job at UC and figure it out. That's home,
Yeah.
you know? And so I
Mhm.
went back and I went across the street. So I crossed Clifton Avenue yet again. So my commute's always been to Clifton. It's just been to different areas. But I went across the street and became the associate athletic director for major gifts at the University of Cincinnati athletic department. So
And
hard, hard,
yeah,
hardest. One of the hardest things I've ever done was to sit in that room with those coaches and tell those coaches I was leaving.
yeah, yeah,
That's
because you
family.
were part of the fabric of the school, and a large part, a lot of the reason that the athletic success that we saw during that time. And so, you know, when you're successful in a space, it's easy to get real comfortable, right? And I think
Yeah,
comfort's good, but it is the enemy of change and shift and innovation, right? Because you
absolutely.
can get comfortable, it's routine, and you can just continue to do that, and you can do it still at very high levels. But like you said, the challenge isn't necessarily there. And you know, there's always this feeling in your case of needing and wanting to do more, and you felt like that was a charge you had from what
Mhm.
God, you know, how He was showing up in your life and putting this on your heart. So you made the leap over to UC, and you've been really successful over there doing that work. And so are you? So what? How have you leaped inside of that space as well?
So yes. So again, it was kind of a God thing. Needed a challenge. Needed to do a little bit more. And this was probably one of the biggest leaps, if not the biggest leap of my life. I mean, I had been in athletics since I was 4 years old. And
Hmm.
so an opportunity came up to jump over to the medicine side of fundraising. I really didn't know anything about medicine. I didn't know any of the terms. It took me forever to learn how to say otolaryngology. I had to like Google that like 100 times to play it so I could learn how to say it. But the opportunity came up, and the leadership of our foundation is really good. So I was able to leave athletics altogether. So scariest leap ever, and go over to medicine. And again, it was about wanting the challenge. It was about wanting to do more. It was about wanting to learn more. It was about just constantly growing and evolving
Hmm.
and doing what God wants me to do.
Yeah.
And so that to me is the biggest thing. Like if you're in tune to the word and in tune to him, no matter how you see him or he speaks to you. But the day that they called me and said I was being offered the job in medicine, there was the most amazing sunrise that morning. And my pastor had texted me, "Hey, have you walked outside?" And as soon as I got that text from him, "Hey, have you walked outside?" I said, "I'm going to get offered the job in medicine today."
Yeah.
And I walked outside and the sunrise was unbelievable. And so I just waited for the call. And sure enough, it came that day. And so I'm thankful for a God who's ordered my steps, given me courage, given me mentors, giving people to walk beside me. And he's beside me. And so what I've grown out of, I stayed at Hughes too long. I
Hmm.
really did. And
Hmm.
so, because it was, like you said, it was familiar, it was easy. I thought my identity was an athletic director, but really my identity is in God. And so once I figured that out, I guess in my 30s or early 40s, the rest of this is, while it's difficult, it's easier to say yes to God because I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. And I tell my daughter all the time, I say, Jameson, just give me 1 minute of courage. Just 1 minute of courage. Just get up out of bed and get dressed for the day. Go outside and practice your soccer. Just 1 minute. Because once you get started, after that 1 minute, you're going to be fine. It's just that 1 minute of saying, I want to quit my job. I want to get out of bed. I want to start a marathon training. I want to save for Paris, or I want to go to Paris, just 1 minute, just book the ticket. It takes 1 minute. So, and then it sets everything else in motion to where you're like, well, I guess I'm doing it. So that for me has been, the biggest breakthrough of my life is that God's with me. He's not going to let me fail. And if I can just in my flesh find that 1 minute of courage, it's all going to work out.
I love that 1 minute of courage, because I think, that's it. You said it earlier, like you said, nobody's coming, right, to make you make the leap from college athlete to moving to Nashville to nobody's coming, right? You'll definitely have people that'll have opinions, right? You'll definitely have people who want to give you advice, good, bad, or indifferent, right?
Right.
But the actual doing has to be you. It has to be you finding that moment of courage to move forward and take the leap into a place that could be super scary, could be super unknown, but that it speaks to your heart and that it speaks to your passions. And you're willing to be vulnerable to, like, putting it all on the line and going out there and doing it. So I'm happy for you, excited that you did it.
It's exciting. And the other thing too, I think that people need to learn, especially, women, is just because you're struggling does not mean you're failing. And that is because I leaped into something I know nothing about. It's a daily struggle. It's fun, but it's a daily struggle. But I'm not failing. I'm learning. And 6 months from now, I'll know way more than I knew. A year from now, I'll know way, and eventually you hope to get to mastery level, but you have to be patient with yourself once you do decide to leap, because you're going to struggle. You can't go from expert here and then when you switch jobs, now you're a beginner over here. You don't get to go expert to expert. Like, you don't go expert to expert. It doesn't work like that. You go from expert to nothing. Maybe expert to medium level. So you have to work your way back up. And that, I think, is the scary part for some people, is they're like, well, I already know everything here. Like, and I'm a big shot, or I'm the CEO, or I'm the athletic director, or I'm the whatever. I'm the boss. But if that's not where God's calling you to be, then you're not in his will. And eventually that's a house of cards. So you just have to know where he wants you to go. And then you have to kind of find yourself in the struggle of the new job.
Well, I think those are really important things for everybody to remember. I don't think I've gotten anywhere without prayer, period. And being able to listen and be intentional about, being, what I ask for in my prayers, being super purposeful about that, right? But because I think he hears us and he understands, and he shows up differently in our lives when we have to be really aware and paying attention, and have our heart in the right place and the right heart position. As my good friend says all the time, your heart has to be in the right position in order to receive and know where you should. That is right. So I'm so glad that you were on the podcast today. I've been waiting for you to come for
a minute, coming for a minute.
But you're super busy and you're always doing something amazing and pouring life into any space that you're in, whether it's fundraising for UC or doing something in the community. You're always out there walking the walk, not just talking the talk. So I appreciate who you are, and I'm so glad that you continue to leap and make really big, amazing things happen for the world. And I just love you, and I want to thank you for being on the podcast today.
And all of that right back at you. Thanks for this, what you're giving to people that, they need to make a change, and they know they need to make a change, and their lives are going to be better for it. So thanks for all you do.
All right. Well, I will put, if anybody wants to reach out to Jolinda because they want to donate money to UC, or if they want to have her on their podcast, we'll make sure that we'll have that available for you in the links down in the chat. All right. Thanks everybody for showing up today for this episode of Life After the Leap, and we'll see you next time.